Hey YouTube, it's Yaki. I'm the owner of Jews for Trump YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to be doing a live reaction video to Sam Harris's conversation yesterday with Stephen Bonnell, the YouTuber known as Destiny. And I wanted to make this video because, first of all, you can see here this is about a 45-minute video because the rest of the conversation is behind a paywall. And to my chagrin, Destiny's arguments really fall apart. I don't exactly remember. Somewhere around, the 20 or 30-minute mark is where you really start to see the true face of Destiny. And I wanted to make this video because the first, 10, 20 minutes of this video is the most compelling steelman argument for, not just Jews, anyone, to vote for Kamala Harris. And so I felt that it was really urgent to do something a little bit different on the channel. And I respect the American people enough and my friends to make the case for Donald Trump, to ask, independents, progressives, liberals, what can Donald Trump do or say to earn your vote between now and the election in November? So let's start listening.
Actually watched less of the Democratic National Convention than the Republican one, though I saw enough to be encouraged. I'm happy with Harris's apparent pivot to the center. Whether she can credibly maintain that under questioning by journalists remains to be seen. I'm hopeful that she can.
Wow, is that an endorsement? Is that Harris for Harris?
But I think the debates will probably matter a lot. At least they present the possibility of being decisive. I think a lot can happen there, for good or for ill. But one point I would make, this is a point I have made to some of my friends who will be voting for Trump. You might be surprised that I have friends who will be voting for Trump, but I actually have some close ones. The moves that are generally used to discount the crazier things he says he will do can be used even more plausibly to discount the crazy things that Kamala Harris has said, right? I mean,
But can they really, Sam? And Sam, in his own words, said that he simply never had a concern, a significant concern about anti-Semitism before October 7th. And I think that really tells you everything you need to know about his ability to follow the plot of the geopolitical, foreign policy of this administration and the previous administration. And we've seen both. We've had 4 years of both. We had 4 years of Trump, and now we've had 4 years of this. Do you want 8 more years of this?
if you can not take Trump literally or even seriously when he says that he's going to round up 20 million undocumented workers, that is, fruit pickers and restaurant workers and
Okay, so now he's going all the way back to 2016. Anyone who's listened to the Trump-Vance campaign in recent memory knows that the entire idea is to start with the criminals. You start with the people. You don't start with, the undocumented workers. You start with the people that are not law-abiding, and you deport them first, and then we can have a more reasonable conversation about what to do about the rest.
nannies and millions of people who are doing indispensable work in our economy. He's going to round them all up in what? Concentration camps, using the military, and deport them. Just linger over the details here for a moment and realize that millions of these people, quite literally millions of these people, have children who are themselves American citizens, right? If you can discount this phantasmagorically unethical and counterproductive fantasy of a policy as just political pandering and pablum, messaging to his fanatical base, and perhaps you can, well, then why can't you discount Harris's ridiculous and obviously unworkable idea of imposing a wealth tax. Does
Does
anyone
anyone
think
think
she's
she's
going to
going
do
to do
that?
that?
I don't.
How do you know? Because if Harris 2 is anything like Biden 1, that would not surprise me. Okay, now we had 4 years of Trump, and that did not occur. There were no concentration camps. Okay, there were no. Okay, the only reason that we need mass deportations now, as opposed to under Trump, is because they have left the border wide open to the entire world's criminals, Hamasnikim, terrorists, and the rest.
But it's interesting. The bar for political integrity and honesty moves as you move left of center. If she actually knows she can't do such a thing, it's absolutely outrageous for her to make such a campaign promise. But right of center, nobody cares. Everyone apparently takes what Trump claims he will do with a grain of salt. Anyway, Vice President Harris will not be able to avoid hard questions forever. Certainly some will come up in the debate if she declines to hold a press conference or do long-form interviews before then. And I am reasonably hopeful that she will find the center of our politics and stake her claim there. More to come on politics, and even in today's conversation. Today I'm speaking with Stephen Bunnell, otherwise known as Destiny. Stephen is a YouTuber and political streamer. His background is a little different from most of the people I've had on this podcast, but his commentary on politics and culture has made him almost ubiquitous online, where he stirs up controversy on both the right and the left. He grew up in a conservative Catholic household and now spends much of his time arguing against American conservatism, and Trumpism in particular. He's debated some of the same people I've debated on a variety of topics, and he's debated people who I wouldn't be inclined to talk to, people like Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes. One of the things we discussed today is how he thinks about engaging such a wide range of characters. We talk about allegations of Trump derangement syndrome, why Trump's norm violations don't matter to so many people, people's misadventures on the information landscape, social media and the problem of being too online, our differences of emphasis when thinking about conflict in the Middle East, the difference between the far left and the far right in American politics, the lack of sane conservative policies to counterbalance the craziness of the left, whether the pendulum of sanity is swinging back on the left, the ethics and politics of giving public apologies, the maintenance of private friendships or their failure and public disagreements, and other topics. I am here with Stephen Bunnell. Stephen, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sam.
You are otherwise known as Destiny. Perhaps we should start there. Are you in the process of retiring Destiny, or are you just bouncing between both names?
My background when I first started streaming forever ago was in professional gaming for StarCraft 2. So I kind of went through the trouble of getting all the branding for Destiny, like the YouTube channel, the Instagram, and everything else. So it feels very difficult to give up. It's nice to just have that name. So I go by, people call me Steven in real life, and then you can find my stuff online as Destiny. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so you've been very active in a part of online culture that I have had very little to do with. I mean, as you say, you got your start in gaming, but then you have become quite prominent online, debating people around mostly politics, but I think you've covered a wide range of topics. How did that start for you?
My mom is from Cuba. She came over when she was 6. So I grew up in a very conservative household, and my parents have always had very strong conservative opinions. And then going through grade school and high school, I guess I have like the debater archetype. I don't know if that's genetic or just I got it from my mom environmentally. So
Okay, this does not surprise me at all because it's the same story with Katie Collins of CNN, and it's also the opposite of my story. Okay, I grew up with progressive parents, and human nature is that there's a tendency for children to rebel, uh, against the status quo, against which is what their parents represent.
I've always been kind of like an argumentative disagreeable person who's been politically interested. When I first got into streaming video games in I think like end of 2010, early 2011, the focus was video games, but we also spoke a lot about, just like pop culture, philosophy, science, politics, whatever. And then in 2016, I picked it up as a much more significant part of what I did online.
And you and I debated at least a few of the same people. I've debated Jordan Peterson several times. You did that at least once. I think you've also spoken to Ben Shapiro. I'm not sure how we've overlapped with other people, but
Mm-hmm.
I think you've spoken to people who I would avoid. I'm wondering how you make these decisions. I saw that you spoke to Nick Fuentes, who's, I think, an avowed white supremacist, if not actual Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, you spoke to Candace Owens. Is there anyone you regret engaging?
I'll take that in two parts.
Mm.
So for the first one of my strengths is that I'm willing to talk to almost anybody. So it gives me very big reach into a lot of different types of communities because I'm willing to go into different shows and I can have a good time with a large variety of people and different types of characters, but I can still provide pushback against a large variety of different types of characters. So it's kind of it's a balancing act of how aggressive do I want to be versus how long do I want my legs to be? How far do I want my reach, I guess, to extend into other communities? The only times I'm disappointed or I regret engaging with people is if I feel like the other person got more out of it than I feel like I did. So, for instance, if I were to platform a very small, very radical person and then not give adequate pushback,
Mm.
and I feel like he bested me in a conversation that I could have been more prepared for, or if I'm, I just don't, I want to, I don't want to promote bad ideas.
And in the case of his debate with Yishai Fleisher, which I will include at the end of this video, and I'll put a timestamp for you all to enjoy that, he seemed to me like he was very prepared. He just happens to be profoundly wrong about the conflict.
Bring them to everybody's attention and then, have a bad showing against it. But if there's really popular talking points and a lot of people believe a thing, I think it's worth discussing and I'll have those people on to fight with them. Yeah. And then the second part was if I regret, over the past year, I've regretted everything. God.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a constant balancing act between, like I said, like how gentle do I want to be versus how aggressive do I want to be. I would say around the last year, I'd been making a more, I go back and forth between these very empathetic approaches to debate versus like these very aggressive approaches. And so the past year, I've been more empathetic and I've gotten conversations with Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens. And I worry sometimes that I play this role in like, oh, well, look, I debated Destiny and we got along and it was fine. And it's like, well, we kind of debated, but I was being very, very, very gentle because I'm trying not to make you so mad that you'll never talk to me again or that you won't have the conversation. So then when I look back at the role I played in that, and then I see now when I take more aggressive positions on things that I feel strongly about, they're like, well, I can't talk to Destiny. That guy's crazy. Candace Owens wouldn't let me in her space a week ago because she said I was a sexual deviant while she was speaking with Andrew Tate and Dan Blitzerian. I'm like, what? So now I'm like,
you're in good
I'm just here
company. Or you watch part of your conversation with Candace, and I mean now perhaps she has transformed into her current monstrous shape since you debated her. I haven't really followed her timeline very closely. This is one of the consequences of having gotten off social media. There are things I don't follow, which they seem very big online, I'm sure. But Candace Owens becoming a proper anti-Semite was something I think I had on my bingo card some years ago, and so I was unsurprised. But I'm not quite sure when she fully pulled the mask off, if it was ever properly on. You don't think the semi-friendly, even somewhat adversarial conversation with her just has the net effect of kind of laundering her reputation with your audience and doing more harm than good?
With my audience, absolutely not. With the other audiences, that's what is so hard to determine. Like I said, I don't the idea that Candace can say like, oh, well, I had a debate with Destiny or I had a conversation with Steven. And it's like, not really. That was a very gentle, if you watch the conversation, I think at around 10 minutes, I realized that even then I'm pushing back too much and she's about to rage out and leave. And I'm like, okay, well, we got to be more gentle. So that irritates me. My audience is never becoming, just because I put out so much content, I stream so much, I put out so many videos and I have so many conversations. They're not going to hear somebody like that and instantly be captivated and become whatever neo-Nazi Blexit combo of weird stuff she is now. But for audiences in the middle, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's good to provide some pushback. Like it legitimizes me in that I can talk to a lot of different people. It legitimizes me in the eyes of her audience. Like, oh, well, this, Steven's a reasonable guy that you can have conversations with. But then it also plays kind of a dirty role that everybody's been complicit in over the past several years of like making some of these ideas seem a lot more reasonable and sane than they actually are. And I've spent the past few months or the past month or so after the assassination attempt, saying, okay, hold on, no, let's back up. A lot of this stuff is insane, and I think we need to go back to calling this insane.
Is there anyone whose name I would recognize who you've decided not to talk to because you just viewed them as too dishonest or unethical?
I'll still talk to anybody, but the conversations are just going to be a lot more aggressive. I'm not going to have a conversation with Jordan Peterson while he just kind of like meanders through the point that 20% excess deaths in Europe are all caused by the vaccine. That's not going to happen next time. Like, okay, well, we're going to sit here, we're going to fixate on this point now.
Jordan and Ben have had this blossoming friendship over the last, for a long time, but especially the last few weeks.
Or when I ask Ben Shapiro, like, don't you guys think you grade Trump on a curve? And he's like, yeah, we do. I'm like, okay, that can't stand, right? Yeah, I just won't let those things flow by anymore. Yeah.
So, what have you regretted in the last year? What has been the controversy or the chaos?
For some reason, I never understood that. The media is. I always hear the media is left-wing dominated. The media is dominated by the left, and I hear that, and I look online, and I see kind of the crazy left, and then I look at like CNN and MSNBC, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe they are, but somehow, even in left-wing spaces, the conservatives have such a good reign on controlling the discourse. And I'm so upset that I allowed myself to be...
Because we are the ones talking. Okay, do you know anyone else that would do this, what I'm doing right now, and just talk into a microphone on the left? They can't defend their own ideas. That's why we're controlling the discourse right now on YouTube and on Snapchat and all these other platforms. Like, and X. And that's a good thing because the legacy media, cable, Comcast, they're all in the pockets of the deep state. It's all the DNC, the FBI, the CIA, the media, it's all collusion. Now, to be fair, I think this came out, I'm not sure exactly when this came out, but at least in the 45-minute conversation, they did not mention Zuckerberg. This may have even came out a few hours before Zuckerberg's pre-October, late August surprise. Okay, barring other future possible October surprises yet in store. The meta censorship of the before the 2020 election did seem to me like that could be the big October surprise, that was delivered to us, yesterday at the end of August, right? So that remains to be seen. So I can give, I'm not sure, I can give them the benefit of the doubt because I don't hear them discuss that here. Frankly, I don't know how you can make a video like this about the 2020 election right before the 2024 election and not discuss that. That seems very irresponsible. So I very much hope that this was just a mistake. I hope that Sam Harris, will make another video a week from now, a day from now, do some housekeeping, right? And actually acknowledge the election interference in the 2020 election that, Zuckerberg just confessed, to the entire world.
Kind of brainwashed by the Trump derangement syndrome insult where I'm like, okay, I got to be really fair. I got to be really careful when I cover Trump because I don't want to sound deranged. I don't want to sound unhinged. And, and I'm sitting here trying to think like, okay, well, when Trump said this absolutely crazy thing, when January 6th happens, like it was just this and that and that. And then meanwhile, the conservatives are like, so here's the 57th picture of Hunter Biden's dick that we're showing in Congress. And we know, by the way, that him and Joe Biden, unilaterally dictated.
Right. And then the liberals tell you that aliens are real and that the laptop was abducted.
World policy to get rid of this prosecutor in Burisma. And it's like, oh my God. The uneven playing field, the assassination attempt, I think, completely broke me. When I saw how indignant conservatives are, like, you guys are calling us Nazis and look what happens. And then I'm like replaying in my mind all the Paul Pelosi comments. And I'm like, no, this is insane. I'm sorry. You guys completely bought the farm on this. This is crazy.
What do you attribute this skewing to? Let's take the case of an intelligent person who is not allergic to Trump in the way that we are. I happen to know some of these people. I even have a few good friends who, I would consider, this is something I say to their face. I consider them low information voters. They're simply not disposed to pay attention to all of.
Well, there is a case for having a low information diet. It might, just be healthier from a mental health perspective. Politics isn't supposed to be about joy. Okay, if a politician makes you feel joy, it's probably Mao or Stalin or Kamala Harris. Politics, making this video, this does not bring me joy. Okay, this is a public service. This is a necessary discussion that we have to have before the election. Both Sam and I deleted, Twitter. Okay.
The thousands of norm violations and other indiscretions that Trump is trailing, right? So they have a little bit in their head. They have a lot of what I would consider misinformation from the right that more or less exonerates Trump on all counts. The phrase, the Russia collusion hoax, does an inordinate amount of work in their brains.
I wonder why. Maybe it's because they lied about it up until the election in 2016, and then they continued to 4 years. Steele dossier was a hoax.
And they've essentially just averted their eyes from the whole problem, and they come away with a feeling that more or less all of the kind of reaction that you and I have had to Trump is totally overblown. I mean, it is Trump derangement syndrome. It is just, we don't like the guy's personality and we couldn't get over that. But when you look at policies, he's super normal and not even especially conservative. And, much of his criticism of the powers that be and the way things were done in Washington for as long as anyone can remember, many of the criticisms are valid. There is a kind of deep state sclerosis that needs to be reamed out. They don't spend much time thinking about the actual ideologues in his orbit, people like Steve Bannon and what he might say on his dumb podcast. And they just see a very clear trade-off between Trump, who is calling bullshit on obvious bullshit.
Maybe we don't care about Steve Bannon because of everyone else that he surrounds himself with. The all-star team of people, okay, like Gabbard and Elon, Kushner, etc.
Like wokeism and the moral panic on the left that has racialized everything and made it seem like trans bathrooms is the greatest human rights concern of our time, etc. And they're truly allergic to all the stuff that's happened on the left, and so they're willing to support Trump, warts and all. How would you perform psychic surgery on this person?
So first, we have to be really clear. Are we
Not a medical doctor.
talking about the audience, or are we talking about like the larger content creators? I call them content creators. You might call them pundits or commentators.
Yeah, I mean, I guess anything you would want to say to or about such a person so as to have an effect upon anyone in the audience like him or her.
I think there are several really large things at play. I think one of the larger there are several large topics at play. One of the larger ones that is hard to talk about is I had a viewer that emailed me with this idea, and I love this idea, and I stole it. He calls it magic boxes. That if you were to go back into the past and you were to hold an abacus, okay, it's very obvious what the function of an abacus is, and you can't hide any conspiracies inside of it. There are no secret cameras. There is no government listening device. Nobody's stealing your. It's just you just see what it is and you operate it, as you do. Nowadays with a phone, you don't really know everything that's going on inside of the phone. So if somebody were to say something like, "I think my phone is always recording me," well, to even begin to have that conversation, it's like, okay, well, do we understand, how telemetry works, how data is sent, what kind of connection is needed, what kind of permissions are needed, like the difference between like the operating system versus an application. Like, there's so much you have to go through that in life today, we basically operate so many of these magical boxes where are on the operating level, on the user level, things are so abstracted away from what's actually happening that it's allowed people to insert so much craziness that can't be easily fact-checked by anything. And I find that this is especially true when you look at my obsession lately has been, I'm trying to compile like a convincing argument relating to the January 6th stuff. So this is where my brain is kind of existing. But you might look at something like Donald Trump making a phone call to not to Raffensperger, but below him, an election fraud investigator in Georgia. If you have the prerequisite background to understand civics and the role of the president in a campaign and the role of a state election investigator, all of that, just that phone call in and of itself is so unfathomably inappropriate. It is such a horrible call. But in order to even begin to understand why, you have to explain so much. And I'll be honest, even I didn't really understand. Like when you say that, like, well, there's electors and, the people don't elect the president, the electors, I didn't even really know what that meant until like 2 years ago. And most people just, I don't even, well, I know this because polling data, most people don't even know 3 branches of government, right? So how can you even begin to explain, the type of egregious norm violations that are happening when people don't know the norms, the systems?
Okay, Obama doesn't know 3 branches of government. The reason why we were having this issue is because he was the one that became king and expanded the executive branch, and now he is in his 3rd term. They're going to go on and on and on about J6 because that's all they have. Other organizations, they give us J6 imagery every day. They bombard us with these violent protests, looting, rioting. We saw it in Chicago at the DNC. We've been subjected to it, for years by Black Lives Matter, and more recently by, these, whatever you call them, the Antifa or the, pro-Palestine, okay, criminals, okay. We need to deport we have a lot of people if you don't think we have a lot of people to deport, you are out of your mind. And now they're flying them in on planes so that they can say that border crossings are down. It's no wonder that Harris campaign aides are now advocating for the Trump border wall. Okay, so all of her policies, they're either Marxist policies or they're policies that were plagiarized. Why? Because you have to vote for Harris. Because now this is what coming to the middle means. It means agreeing with every position and no position. That's what Sam is confident that she will do. And that means you have to vote for her. If you're Jewish, you have to vote for her because she's pro-Israel. And if you're Palestinian, you have to vote for her because she's pro-Palestine.
That have the people just don't have the understanding to even be able to grapple with, why would it be bad for this guy to make a phone call? But that people immediately understand, like cutting children's penises off to make them trans or whatever other crazy, like far left conspiracy stuff.
Okay, are you going to tell us anytime soon why it's bad for him to make a phone call? Now, maybe that's past the paywall, right? Because this was a much longer minutes. Okay. So maybe they do get into civics. Okay, I highly doubt that. Okay, and I'm not going to pay to find out, by the way. If you have a real argument, tell us. And this is all, and by the way, I don't like this about both sides. I don't like how both sides on the J6 issue say, we have the data, but you need to pay us for it. Because it sounds like a scam on both sides when you do that, right? I'm inclined to believe that both sides have a very large data dump and that some of it is true. Some true arguments, okay, about unethical behavior, around that, time in January. And on the right, I am very confident that they have evidence of voter fraud. This is why we have laws to prevent voter fraud, because it's not it. And they shoved CNN and the legacy media kept on saying that there was zero. They said there was no evidence of any voter fraud. Then they changed that talking point twice. Then they had to change that talking point to there was no widespread evidence of voter fraud, because everyone knew the idea that there had to be at least a non-zero amount of voter fraud, and that they couldn't just hide it forever. Why? Because of what Destiny said a few minutes ago about phones. If you did a FOIA request, you could catch people stuffing ballots, even if you didn't have surveillance cameras, because all these people carry phones. So you could do a FOIA request, and you could use satellites to catch people doing this. But of course, we'll never know, because the deep state will never, actually, follow the law and cooperate with FOIA. So
conservatives like to obsess over, like, that's immediately understandable. So yeah, that's one huge thing that you have to get over, is you just need like a decent foundation of knowledge to even understand why some of the things are norm breaking. Yeah.
Let's focus on January.
Right, and they're just gonna go on, and then they said they changed it twice. Okay, so they went from zero voter fraud, okay, to spread voter fraud, to no widespread voter fraud that could significantly influence the outcome of the election. And now it's no widespread voter fraud that could significantly influence the outcome of the election, because all that happened was big tech suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story. Of course, we know in 2016 they suppressed negative stories about Hillary Clinton. I'm sure that had a huge impact just because of the role that negative bias played. Right, Sam Harris understands very well that negative bias, a negative story sticks in your brain for 10 times longer than a positive story. Right, that's just how humans, for evolutionary reasons. Admittedly, Sam is a PhD. We both have the same degree, but Sam is a PhD and I have an undergraduate degree. I'm actually, trying to get to his level.
January 6th, what would you say to someone who thinks that January 6th was basically a non-event? I mean, it certainly wasn't an insurrection. It was there was some sort of misbehavior on one side of the building, and on the other side of the building, courtesy of Tucker Carlson and others, we have footage of the cops just letting people in. And so, was it violent? Yeah, I guess if you look at.
So they're kind of like, well, people have only seen part of the footage, but that's not really true because the whole footage recently, I mean, not that long ago, Vice or someone else released like the whole uncut footage of the event. So I would just encourage you, because they're going to say that right now they're going to tell you that most people just haven't seen the whole footage. There's no excuse for that. Just go and watch the whole thing. Okay, and then make up your mind about it. It will make you uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable seeing these things. But to my knowledge, it's not clear to me that anyone actually died that day. There were lots of injuries, and there were people that died, I think, after as a result of January 6th. But the media has been so obfuscating the whole event, and I also don't really care enough to find out, what the actual specifics are of that, because we're subjected to foreign flags and violent riots on a daily basis, where people are, killed and maimed.
At some of the footage, it was super violent, but some of the people don't even look at that footage, and they just see the people getting led in and then wandering around in what seemed to be a kind of a low stress environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that seems strange. And then there are rumors that there were, FBI plants in the crowd, and maybe this whole thing was a kind of false flag thing. That I heard a rumor that Pelosi didn't get enough cops there when she could have, et cetera, et cetera. So, and Trump did say from the dais, that you should all be peaceful in some form. And so all of this, just this impressionistic tour of, half truths.
All I'm saying about Pelosi, look, how would either me or Sam know the truth about that? Because we're not involved in any way. If they abandoned their namesake, the Democratic Party, they abandoned democracy to do a coup on the sitting president, to coronate a candidate that received 0 votes. Because Republican, I mean, that sounds more like, republic. It sounds more like a representative democracy. It sounds more like, electoral college. Word democracy, it just means, popular vote is basically, I mean, that's all the word in and of itself means. All I'm saying is that, not that it's, even that bad, because I think the right overreacts to this, a little bit, because it's just that it's a little bit awkward when that is the name of your party and you just blatantly don't care about it at all.
People a sense that, all right, that whatever happened over there, it was ugly, and I wouldn't have voted for it, but it wasn't really Trump's responsibility, and it was just a mob that misbehaved, and American democracy wasn't at stake. How would you untangle that?
I mean, it's kind of going back to what you said about, it sounds so bad to say, but like low information voters. For stuff like this, I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did a little focus group because I've compiled so much information about this. And I got 6 pretty decently big YouTubers together, and I like went through like 7 hours of information, and I asked them like, hey, what's the most surprising thing to you? Or what didn't you know? Or what do you care about? Or what don't you care about? And for a lot of it, it was just like so much information that people don't know. So one of the things that I was told after talking to these people so long is, one thing they said is, I didn't realize the timelines at the Capitol. So for instance, people will say, Donald Trump tweeted, stay peaceful, and that should be good, right? But when you actually look at everything that was happening in the day of and the context, and it's like, oh, that tweet was sent like 20 minutes after the Capitol had been broken into, like an hour and a half after the Capitol grounds had been penetrated. When you start to see the tweets in context of like an actual timeline, stuff takes on a far more insidious shape. than when you just say, oh, well, he tweeted out be peaceful. And, who knows at what time or what part of the day. Having more facts, I think, and contextualizing things in a more appropriate way. Nobody knew anything about the elector plot, like the 7 fake slates of electors. And none of this is like conspiratorial. Like all the information is out there. You can see the fake slates that they all signed with their signatures. There's a YouTube video of them trying to go to the Capitol in Michigan to enter. The plot inside to have Clark replace Rosen, when Rosen and Donahue are arguing with Trump about sending out a fake letter to the states about voter fraud, that was a really big one. A lot of people will say this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard about. People say, like, we don't know if Trump knew he was lying about voter fraud. How could you ever prove what's in somebody's mind? And it's like, well, let me introduce you to the entire criminal justice system of the United States, because in order to convict on crimes, you have to know what the mens rea is. That's the most important part of convicting on a crime. But for Trump, there are so many examples of somebody saying, hey, by the way, this isn't true. And then like 2 days later, Trump will say the exact same claim over and over and over and over and over again. He does this like so many times. And having that clearly laid out where people can say, you know what? I think Trump actually just was lying. And I think he knew the whole time. But it's a big information dump. And you have to find a way to present the information in like a compelling and an interesting and like an emotional way. And then how close we were. Oh, the 2 other things. How close we were on the 6th to everything failing. If Pence had flipped, if there was more violence. Like there are a couple of things. Pence is the big part that didn't flip that could have. That's one thing. And then the second thing was I didn't realize this until I was really late into my research. Oh my God. The best video that you could ever watch on January 6th is InfoWars. If you really want to know the day of what people felt like and what was going on when they watched that, it's so funny because when conservatives talk about it now, they memory hole it, right? Oh, it's just the people wandering around. Who cares? Watching the conservative coverage and the tweets the day of, I saw, like Ashley Babbitt might be the first victim of the second revolution. There was that meme video of the woman who got sprayed with mace or whatever. And she's like, we're storming the Capitol, dude. It's a revolution. Constantly.
The left does the same thing where they sympathize. Yes, I think those images are going to make the vast majority of Americans uncomfortable, especially things like the Confederate flag, white supremacy or neo-Nazism makes me, as a Jew, makes me uncomfortable. At no point when I watched the video did I feel good about this. I voted for Trump in 2020, okay? I wasn't that disappointed that he lost. I remember being pretty upset. I don't remember being like in a dramatic way. I don't remember being in tears necessarily. In 2016, I definitely I was too young to vote, but I definitely remember thinking Trump was the lesser of 2 evils. I had been a conservative, I think, since 2015 at that point. Now, in 2024, I think I definitely feel a certain amount of sympathy with some of the sentiments of, a minority, a very small amount of the protesters, and just the way they felt that day. Given, in hindsight is 2020. I'm saying in light of, 3.5 years of this god awful administration, that has made all of our lives abysmal.
Referring to the rioters as patriots, saying that they've taken the Capitol, we've overtaken it, we've got it, we've captured this back, for the people. It's so obvious what everybody's saying and what's going on. And then as soon as Babbitt gets shot, the National Guard shows up, the rhetoric starts to change a bit. There are so many funny quotes. There's even like quotes from some of these guys on, I think Owen Schroyer might have been one, where people are saying things like, these are patriots. This isn't BLM or Antifa. You could tell these are patriots. And then like the next day, it was all Antifa. We don't know who any of these people were. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I think the simplest cut at this for me, and I'm always surprised that it doesn't work on everybody, and there's just endless examples of it not working. I mean, it hasn't worked on half the country, but it really can come out in a very short paragraph, which is just that what we had was a sitting president who would not commit to a peaceful transfer of power. I mean, months in advance of the election. I mean, this was back in March or so. I think that the question was first put to him, and he clearly declined to abide by the results of an election unless he won that election. And while the election was being run, he was clearly preparing the ground to call it fraudulent. And he then lied endlessly about having had the election stolen from him. I mean, the irony is that
However, Biden, in his own words, said that there was election fraud. You can chalk that up to dementia. Okay, that's fine. At the end of the day, there was a peaceful transition of power. When you see the current president of the United States weaponizing the justice system to imprison his political opponent before an election. Yeah, hindsight is 2020. That makes J6 look very, very different. My view is that since the 2000s, there's been a non-zero level of election fraud, and it's on both sides. Frankly, that's probably for the best, because if it was only on one side, what would otherwise be just a small negligible factor would suddenly become very not negligible, especially in swing states where it can just come down to a very small number of votes. So if both sides are participating in election fraud, in stuffing ballots, but it's just a very small number of votes, well, then both sides are kind of getting like an equal boost, right? And so then it just becomes kind of negligible, because then it kind of just cancels out. Okay, it's only when one side appears to just be dominating over the other that the other side is concerned for democracy. Trump is too old to run for a third term. So what are we even talking about? A current sitting president? I should say sitting vice president, de facto president, essentially, because Joe Biden is, a corpse on a beach at this point, is doing everything to put their political opponent in jail. It's been 40 days. She hasn't answered a single question from the media. She hasn't done a single interview. Okay, all of her, contradictory policy positions come from her aides at this point. So we have no idea what she believes. And early voting starts in 2 weeks.
In the process of attempting to steal an election while claiming that it has been stolen from him. And in the end, we didn't have a peaceful transfer of power, right? So like that single...
In the end, we did.
Desecration of the foundational norm of our democracy. I mean, it seems to me that we don't have the laws that we actually should have in place to punish a president who does this, right? To have a sitting president not commit to a peaceful transfer of power and then do what he can to ensure that we don't have one, it seems to me that that jail should await such a person, and we don't actually have the laws to accomplish that. But I
mean, I fully disagree on that last point. We had Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which was very clearly meant to prevent a person like this, at the very least, from holding future office.
Right. Well, sorry, but
and we do have criminal charges against him, but the Supreme Court is protecting him from those. So,
it's incredible. I mean, but the fact that having that in the 14th Amendment is as ineffectual as it is in practice. In any case, so it just, why do you think so many people, I mean, fully half the nation, one can, I guess, discount all the people who really aren't informed about this, but there are all too many people who know exactly what I just alleged to be true, which is that he didn't commit to a peaceful transfer of power and we didn't have one. Why doesn't that matter, do you think?
Because not everyone is like you. People your age, Sam, that are middle-aged, they don't have time. They watch 10 minutes of garbage, CNN, Clinton News Network, and go to work. And what happens during that 10 minutes? Okay, well, from 2016 to 2020, what would happen was they would shove the Steele dossier down your throat. And then ever since 2020, right, so from 2020 to 2024, 8 of the 10 minutes is shoving J6 down your throat. Or down your ears holes. And if they just repeat it over and over and over again, okay, it starts to sound like a serious threat to democracy, ignoring all the other threats. All of America's adversaries across the globe, they're sending their terrorists, their criminals, they're emptying their jails and their mental institutions into our country, right? None of that is a threat to democracy, right? All of that, anything that Lake and Riley, that's just a fringe occurrence. That's just an outlier. It's a statistical outlier. Okay, bullshit. We live in a third world country now. It's ridiculous. Okay, we're tired of it. MAGA.
Well, for some people, this is why I'm saying there's different issues that affect different players or people in different ways, and they all have different motivations for why they believe what they do. So for the average voter or listener, I would say a lot of these people just don't have all the information, and they are susceptible to all the ordinary follies of man. That me, and I imagine you, everybody is susceptible to. We hear things we want to hear. We tend to seek information we want to, find to affirm our biases and all this. This is just kind of what everybody is falling prey to some extent, and to some level in your life.
Yes, especially if you have a low information diet, which is probably better. We're all going to have confirmation bias. In my opinion, we're all wrong sometimes. If you can just either admit it or apologize when necessary, that you were wrong about something, then I'm fine with that. And that's what Sam did with regard to October 7th. He admitted that he had just simply anti-Semitism had never crossed his worried mind before October 7th. Okay, you have to be pretty ignorant and living under a rock, I appreciate that, but vast majority of people that I have interacted with on the left are gaslighting us. And that's certainly true of the DNC. That was the most egregious gaslighting that I've ever seen. So disrespectful. It's so demoralizing. It's heartbreaking. Okay, it is legitimately breaking my heart to see people denying October 7th as if it never happened. It's breaking my heart to see Jewish liberals telling me that the commander-in-chief really doesn't have an impact on U.S. foreign policy, and that U.S. foreign policy doesn't really influence national security and Israel's national security. They repeat this talking point that the Middle East has always been violent. Palestine, the Palestine, is the Philistines. You simply just need to look at how much oil Iran is selling now and how much they were selling under Trump. 90% of Hamas's funding comes from Iran. We are being invaded by every Iranian proxy in the region. We lose to everyone. We lose to the Houthi. Okay, we lose to the Houthi rebels. We lose to Hezbollah. We lose to Hamas every day. They are killing our people. And yet, Jews vote Democrats 70%. And they say, I've been voting blue. People like Sam, they say, I've been voting blue for 50 years. Well, 40. Been voting blue for 40 years, 30 years. It's just unfathomable to them. It's unimaginable that they would do something different. That they would tick the box next to someone whose name has an R next to it. Maybe voting, because voting, it's not really a Valentine to the candidate. The left wants you to think that voting is about joy. It's about a feeling. It's about how they make you feel. It's not. Okay, it's about who do you want to be commander-in-chief. It's about the policies that outlive the candidate. Because Donald Trump, he's too old. He's going to be president for 4 more years, Bezrat Hashem, and then there's going to be a peaceful transition of power because he doesn't want a 3rd term. And anyone that tells you that he wants a 3rd term is gaslighting you. So why do we even care about J6? Because at this point, it's irrelevant. At this point, it's the Democrats that are a threat to democracy. At this point, it's Kamala Harris, de facto president, that wants a 2nd and a 3rd term. She was the last one in the room on it. See, that's the thing. She wants to say that she's not responsible for anything from the Biden administration, and she's also responsible. She's not responsible for any of the bad things that happen, but she's fully responsible for every good thing. The cognitive dissonance is showing. Americans are waking up to it. We're not stupid. You're gaslighting us. And not only that, this last week she's behaved like a lunatic. Okay, she's an alcoholic. She's getting drunk in public. The Dems are in free fall. Look at what they're doing. They're taking videos of, and Destiny, you're going to see the true face of Destiny very soon when he brings up the assassination attempt, okay? Because you're going to see he says some very disgusting things about that very, very soon. Many of the Dems would have you think that Trump staged his own assassination attempt. She's so unpalatable as a candidate that they have to insert 1,000 jump cuts into her videos just to make her appear normal. They have to cut every video of her laughing with that ridiculous cackle. She can never make a live video because she can't talk. Okay, we can't have another dummy as president.
For the content creators, there are far more interesting questions to ask there, but it depends on the person, it depends on the issue. One thing I would say when it comes to foreign stuff that I've been asking questions about, but it's hard to dig into it, I really wonder how much foreign pushing there is on some figures to just have positions that wholesale align with like Russian foreign policy, just like completely 100%. You're 100% alignment. You couldn't be a better spokesperson when talking about, like, it's the same talking points for the Ukrainian war, right? Oh, they're sending men off to die. There's no reason for this. Everybody in the
there is no reason for it because Putin has invaded Ukraine under every president except Trump, because Trump threatened to. Okay, Trump had deterrence. Trump had the respect. But now Destiny is going to bitch and moan about how we need to support Ukraine at all costs. Why? Why can't Ukraine just become a vassal state of Russia? because it would be Biden's fault. See, Biden, they want to fund both sides of every conflict of the globe. Okay? They don't want to provide enough weapons for either side to win. And that's why we're in World War III.
The East, it was a civil war the whole time, and Ukrainian biolabs and Nazis and the now they're starting war in Russia with an invasion. It's like the exact same talking points coming from like Western people. I'm like, why? That's the thing I wonder. A second thing is, unfortunately, if you brand yourself as a person of a certain political persuasion, you kind of have to stick with it. Like, could you imagine, talking to Ben Shapiro, could you imagine if Ben came out and was like, you know what? I kind of don't like Donald Trump, if for no other reason, just because morally he's an atrocious human being.
He was sort of there in the beginning. I mean, I haven't really followed what Ben has done of late, but in the beginning, he was someone who would make the right concessions to basic sanity and ethics around Trump. I mean, he was obviously much more concerned about.
Me and Ben and JD were essentially never Trump at one point in time or another. But Trump, he's not a genius. He's a set of impulses. Okay? And that's the thing. This movement, it shouldn't be about Trump. It should really be about common sense. But it's become about Trump. And the reason is because of the radical left. The radical left is what has pushed us to this point. And Sam has said so. Sam has said that the radical left has essentially guaranteed us 4 more years of Trump. And he could not be more right.
What was happening on the left, but he thought January 6th was
an insurrection. He said the day after.
Yeah, I mean, just a shattering of norms of a sort that we would agree with. But I don't know why he's not essentially a Mitt Romney or a Liz Cheney
because the problem with Mitt is he lost, and he didn't stand up for himself. It doesn't matter that Mitt said to Obama that he was responsible for creating a nuclear Iran. Okay, it doesn't matter how smart Mitt Romney is. Let's think about this for a second. If I go to Iran, I say, listen, excuse me, if you do that, we're going to put 600 sanctions on you. Okay? Okay. Okay, what sounds more what sounds like better deterrence? That? Or, listen, you motherfuckers, if you so much as send a single proxy to attack Israel, we're going to put 600 sanctions on you. Okay, notice how it's the same number of sanctions? Okay, it's the way. Sometimes it's the way you say something that really matters.
Obviously, Republicans who have discovered the line past which they would not be dragged, and they agree with us about Trump. So I don't understand what's happened to people who are kind of splitting the baby there. And I mean, I guess it's audience capture on some level, or it would be the ruination of their business. I mean, it's seeing.
Oh, no. I have no problem criticizing Trump. This is what I have a problem with. And by the way, you can really look at Israel to see this is very clear. Okay, because we have Bibi. He's the longest serving prime minister in our nation's history. Every interim prime minister that we try to sub him out with, right? You would think that the people here are tired of him and that they want to sub him out every couple of years with a young, fresh face. Every single time we try to do that, Ehud Barak, Yair Lapid, what happens? They sell the Medina in 2 seconds. They sell the country to our enemies. It's like the minute they get into power, all of a sudden we're back to a land for peace. It's like the minute they get into power, all of a sudden we're back to, giving, our weapons, our guns are being stolen in East Jerusalem, the carjackings, no law and order, that our enemies get richer, terrorism increases, and Israeli security is jeopardized. And we're sick and tired of it. We're sick of it. And I feel like the military, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of MAGA people in the military that are sick and tired of this, but there's a lot of we got to drain the swamp, because the higher ups, there's a lot of people, in Gaza that frankly I hope they don't come back. So many people that have just accepted this as normal, because it's not their fault. They just don't even know what normal is anymore, because Israel, since its inception, has been under constant attack. We want to become the first world. We want to have the basic promises of freedom and security that you enjoy in America. And yet you deny us that to this day, you are funding both sides of the conflict. You are slow walking weapons to Israel while you are giving weapons freely to the radical Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. It's treason. Robert Malley, the Iranian spy ring, and that's treason. Okay, what this administration is doing is treason. Our enemies get rich and we get poor. That's why, Sam, that's why people vote for Trump. He can't get it through his thick head. I'm so sick of it. Because at the end of the day, foreign policy is very simple. You don't need a genius to be president. You don't have to have Destiny's IQ. The problem is Destiny's IQ is so high that he's really a moron. I've seen this a lot with people. A lot of people that have 200 IQs, they're actually autistic as hell. Okay, I don't know, how this works. It's just a weird thing, but I mean, from a neuroscience perspective, yeah, it's actually very interesting. How you have savants. Okay, you have people. You have Rain Man. That's what Destiny is. Rain Man. He has a lot of God. They cannot fathom why anyone would want a strong male figure to be president with reasonable testosterone levels. Why can't we just have a soy beta male president? Why can't we just have Doug Emhoff or Pete Buttigieg or Tim Walz be president, right? What's the worst that can happen?
In the breakup between Ben and Candace was somewhat instructive insofar as I did see it. I mean, I think I missed 95% of it again because I'm not online, but I saw enough to know, what Ben has been getting from his audience and just how much, so much of his audience doesn't love the Jews. Yeah, I mean, what do you think is happening there? Is it just economics?
Yeah, it's like you said, in the beginning, it seems like they're on board with being more critical, but then as time goes on and the party coalesces around Trump, and Trump is absolutely a cult of personality and he engenders cultish, obsession and adoration, there is no room for disagreement. So one, on a numbers level, that's just factual. Donald Trump enjoys very wide and very deep support from conservative voters. So the media is going to reflect that as well. You can see this in the Dominion lawsuit versus Fox, by the way, that the deposition, the exhibits that they had in their pretrial stuff was fascinating. There are so many slides of people at Fox News saying, this is a lie. We know this is a lie, but my God, we're losing, 30% of our viewership to Newsmax and OAN. So I guess we're going to have to tell the lie to keep our viewers. It's so clear. They won that case. Well, they didn't win it. Fox settled right before trial because they knew they were going to lose that case. One of the largest settlements, I believe, in corporate history for public settlements for defamation. And you see that. And also, that's not an accident. It's not just a result of numbers. It's also incredibly intentional by Donald Trump. He always reminds people. He did it the day of his speech on the Ellipse on January 6th. He says, I helped these people get elected. Not going to do it anymore. I helped these people win their elections, and they don't remember that. When he was talking to Raffensperger, he said, I was such a schmuck for helping this Kemp get elected. What a loser I was for doing that. And he, he did it in Georgia. He didn't want to campaign or help those people because Raffensperger and Kemp wouldn't play ball with helping him steal the election in Georgia. Trump does this very intentionally. He wouldn't go on Fox News. Man, after they called Arizona, he was so mad and he stopped calling into their shows and he was, retweeting and reposting OAN more. So if you don't play ball with him, he will try to destroy you by not working with you anymore and by constantly degrading you. And the followers and the fans, they pick up on that and they act accordingly. So it's hard when you got a business man, am I going to cover Trump honestly and have...
Wow, shocker. The president has a capacity for malevolence. Sam says that Trump, he's never succeeded at anything, right? Obviously that's false, but real estate. But let's just say that Sam is right. Okay, he's not. Okay, let's just say he's right. Let's say that the only thing that Trump has ever succeeded at is being a successful criminal with billions of dollars. Well, you know what? That to me sounds better than Kamala Harris, who has never succeeded at anything that Willie Brown wasn't behind, both literally and financially.
My entire business go bankrupt because no conservative is going to watch me and nobody on the left, no offense, is turning into Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire. Or do you play ball?
But doesn't it still strike you as fundamentally astonishing that Trump has been able to succeed the way he has? That there was that kind of audience that was willing to become a cult of personality around such a, on some levels, just such an unimpressive.
I have always said there are truths. There's true with a capital T and there's true with a lowercase t. And that there has to be some kind of naked, objective reality where we can, and Sam has said this too, where we can evaluate truth claims via a moral landscape with peaks and valleys. Sam's whole thesis was based on common sense and reason too. In fact, I think Sam and Trump have a lot in common. And you know what? Maybe that's it. Maybe it's that they have so much in common and Trump is president and he's not, that he just can't stand it, honestly. Maybe it's an ego thing with Sam. Maybe he needs to go on another meditation retreat and just meditate a little while longer and his ego will dissolve and he'll realize that he's being a total pansy about this election.
Impressive person. I mean, he is just so obviously a fraud, right? I mean, he really is a game show host who pretended to be a great businessman. And he's a Mark Burnett confection, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, it's not that he has no talents. I mean, he's entertaining, right? He can be funny, but I mean, he's barely competent at that, really. I mean, it's not like you have an entertainer of the talent of somebody like Jamie Foxx deciding to be a demagogue, right? I mean, he's just basically entertaining. And I do think that the fact that so many people find him funny counts for an enormous amount of his political success. I mean, just whatever happens at a debate, to be able to say, only Rosie O'Donnell or whatever his other laugh lines were, that's just guarantees your victory at that stage in the primary nature of our politics. But it does. I mean, I've always thought of him as a kind of evil Chauncey Gardner, and I think this probably undersells his gifts, such as they are. But I mean, I've just thought of him as somebody who, for whatever reason, he found himself in a political and social context in America in the early 21st century, where our appetite for junk food for the mind had just reached its peak, and we're a reality TV culture. We're a social media culture. We care about fame perhaps more than anything. And you drop this shameless narcissist into this context, and he manages to function by a different reputational physics. I mean, he manages to seem more authentic than anyone else just by being a shameless con man. In my imagination, the reasons for his success have much more to do with the environment than with the person, but perhaps I'm selling him short.
No, I mean, I agree. Trump is there is no level of media criticism that was too harsh on how clueless he is around some things. I watched him doing something. He was talking to the United Nations, and somebody asked him about, I think it was the UN. I think it was a UN thing. And somebody asked him about Western liberalism. Have you seen this clip?
No.
They ask him about, what do you think about people saying that we might be seeing the fall of Western-style liberalism?
Oh, shut up. It would have been a better question if you had just asked about classical liberalism, and then it would have been a more clear question.
And he starts going off on like LA and San Francisco. And I'm thinking in my mind, oh my God, he doesn't even know what he doesn't know what that means. He doesn't know what liberalism is. He just heard Western liberalism and he's thinking like West Coast liberals. And this guy,
like you, Sam.
I mean, this was true in spaces where you would think it would have really mattered. I mean, when he, early on, when he was trying to prove that he was a good Christian, and the evangelicals were just coming around to support him, and he was asked, point blank, what are your favorite books of the Bible? And it was just absolutely obvious that he couldn't name a single book of the Bible.
Yeah.
Right. And yet that all passed, even for evangelicals.
I wonder why, Sam. The people on the far right that are calling the left baby killers, and the people on the left that want to have Supreme Court reform, so that that are just mourning the loss of Roe v. Wade, like an actual fully grown person died, and not a fetus that got its brain sucked into a sink died. Okay. And by the way, I'm pro-choice. But you got to follow your heart. It has to be a state. Trump has never been. He's so right on this issue. Okay, Roe v. Wade was garbage, and getting this issue back to the states is going to make America way less divided, because this issue is so hot right now, and having everyone at each other's throats over it. What the left is doing at the convention, they're gaslighting you. They're telling you that Trump wants to ban abortion, that Vance wants to ban the pill and abortion. It's all bullshit. Okay, they are doing this to win. They are doing this to win an election. And when it comes from all people, like Bill and Joe, it's disgusting. It's like as if Trump and Kavanaugh can be remotely compared to those two creeps, Bill and Joe. They're disgusting. Okay, but the way that we're supposed to listen to these two on high at the Democratic convention, that these two are the defenders of vulnerable women. Disgusting. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of the gaslighting and the demoralization that's happening in this country. That's why we're going to take this country back in November. We're going to make America great again, and we're going to make Israel great again.
I mean, I was actually at a conference around the time, and I ran into Ralph Reed, and I said, Ralph, what the fuck? I mean, this guy couldn't actually name a book in the Bible. It wasn't that he didn't. I think his line was something like, "Oh, I wouldn't want to say it because I wouldn't want to offend anybody." Right? Like they're all so good, and everyone has their favorite. And I just said, Ralph, you know that he was lying. You know that he's the least Christian person you guys have ever gotten behind. And the dodge was, as you might expect, well, I'm not going to say what's in another person's heart, and it's not for me to judge. It's for God to judge, and blah blah blah. But you would think somehow that would have sunk another candidate in Christian eyes, and on every other front. I mean, just the word salad.
Christians always cared more about the Gospels, synoptic Gospels anyway. But go on.
He produces where he contradicts himself pointlessly, and it all works because nobody cares. But the mystery is, why does nobody care?
I think one thing that helps a lot is that we have this horrible and wonderful thing called the internet. A lot of people start with a very bad, I would say the vast majority of people on the planet have bad epistemic practice, which is fine. I mean, who cares generally? Most people, it doesn't matter. How do you evaluate what's true or not true? What's your theory of truth, or what is it? Like, no one cares. You don't need this for most of your life. But I think one of the big issues that we have is because so many things fundamentally, you have to know a thing to know if it will serve your end or if it will be bad for you. So for instance, if I'm on a balcony with somebody and I say I can fly, and that person's like, really? And then I jump and I fall and I die, it's very immediately obvious. Okay, well, that's a really bad idea. I'm not going to believe.
Right, and the left wants us to believe that the sky isn't blue.
Believe that guy. You can't really selectively pick and choose the things you want to believe when you're grounded, when there aren't magic boxes around you, when you're just in the world. But nowadays with the internet, it is so easy to handcraft whatever narrative you want. And even when you don't think it's that big of a deal, it is a big deal. People get mad at me sometimes when I'm kind of like, I'll pedantically correct lies.
Yeah, it's gotten, the environment is bad. They are right about that. Okay, that is why I am doing this reaction video now and debating people that disagree with me. I wish Kamala Harris would have the courage to debate people that disagree with her instead of constantly changing the rules of the debate in order to continue to postpone it and to sabotage the debate from ever occurring at all.
Lies. And people are like, why? Who cares? It's not that big of a deal. It's like, okay, well, if you tell 10 little lies, it makes it really easy to sell a big lie. And people have this bad assumption for humans that our brains are designed as these, like, ontologically, we have like these epistemically grounded truth-seeking machines that are just trying to figure out what's true at any point in time. And people have no idea how much subjectivity, how much normativity is involved in all of the truth-seeking.
10 little lies into one big lie. Who's doing that? They lied about Russia. They lied about the lab leak theory. They lied about the Hunter Biden laptop. I could go on like this. Who's doing that? 10 little lies until the big lie. What's the big lie? The big lie is that J6 in 2024 is somehow a threat to democracy. Okay, something that happened 4 years ago. A sad and disappointing event is today, a threat to democracy. Okay, because I'm happy to concede that maybe that then it was. Okay, but right now, the threats to democracy are real. They're scary. They're on the left, not the right. But they're going to go through this whole interview and not even mention that.
That we do. So then when you go onto the internet, you're thinking, okay, well, I'm a true brain. I'll get all my media. We'll see what's going on. You don't realize that you were engaged in basically drug abuse. You're finding stuff that just makes you feel good, regardless of the detriment it has to your epistemic, your psychological, your emotional well-being. A really funny example of this, I correct this every time I see people say that.
Yeah, that's why I'm making these funny ass videos, because that's the only way to compete with the ridiculous drug abuse is to make videos that are the medicine to Trump derangement syndrome, to make red pills.
This, and people think it's a small deal, but I don't. I think these are all really big deals. Donald Trump, the assassination attempt, after the guy missed and Donald Trump's ear got shot, Donald Trump came up immediately and he gave that, let's fight, the power. Yeah, let's go. It was not immediate. It was like a minute long. There's like a thing of him like looking for his shoes, like watch the full clip. And people will be like, whoa, what? So you don't think he was brave? It's like, well, he might have been brave. You want to say that? Fine. But why lie about him coming up immediately? And I had a guy challenge me on this and he went over my thing. He was like, Jesse's lying. Like, let's look at this video. And the guy shows an edited video. And I'm like, bro, my video is like 2 minutes long. Your video is like 1:47 and it ends.
Bam. Right there. That is the true face of destiny. Okay, I called it wrong. I watched this video last night. 37 minutes and 28 seconds. That is the true face of destiny. Okay? He's complaining because his friend's video was 13 seconds shorter than his. Okay, this is just like when Trump gives a speech at a rally and he says that, the speech went for an hour and a half. It was a great, 90-minute speech. Like, oh, look how great that speech. And then the media goes on air and says, oh my God, this man lied. His speech was not 90 minutes. He only spoke for an hour and 27 minutes. Okay, he was off by 3 minutes. Okay, this is the type of that we're getting, okay, that we're up against, is people that want to nitpick you and call you on every little lie, and this is why the discourse in our public is falling apart. It's because of people like Destiny. They cannot stand that the commander-in-chief got up and pumped his fist in the air. They could not stand it, okay? First, they tried to say it wasn't a bullet, it was shrapnel. Then they tried to say that they let it happen. Why didn't they take down the shooter before? How was he allowed to get up on the roof? Okay, I want to know the answers to these questions too. Believe me. And by the way, I'm sure my video of the assassination I would imagine that the one I shared was probably even shorter than that. My videos use a lot of jump cuts. Why? Because some of my videos are 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes. Long. If you have a very long video, there's a lot of information to get through. You need to have as many jump cuts as possible because we're trying to get to the relevant information, because the average attention span of the average American citizen is like 2 seconds. Okay. Sam is right. We have our brains have an appetite, for sensationalism and social media junk food, or a social media drug, as he calls it. And so attention spans are short. And so we're just trying to get to the point already. Okay. We're just trying to get to, we're just fast forwarding a video so that we can get, it's not what CNN is doing. What CNN is doing is fully dishonest, because they are clipping up their jump cuts. At one point, I even think that they messed with the audio quality, but it's really what they're doing is they're chopping up their videos to make it look like Trump answered a question in a certain way that he totally didn't. What CNN is doing is just blatantly dishonest. What we are doing is we are just editing videos and setting them to music so that we can make, funny, cool videos and campaign for the president so that he wins. And there's no smoke and mirrors here. There's nothing, yes, it is sensationalism. I am promoting sensationalism. I think it's the only correction to, Trump derangement syndrome. It's the only treatment that we have is to both sides are pumping the internet with as much pro content for their candidate as possible, and I don't blame them. Okay, especially when the other side is not a grassroots movement; it's funded by Soros and billionaires. So this is the public square. This is the fight. It's on social media, and it's people like Destiny who just complain and complain and complain that people are being dishonest when they aren't. And that is why, Destiny, you are forever canceled.
Ends a full minute after mine. Like, you're clearly watching an edited thing. If the truth is good enough, why do you have to exaggerate? So I think people don't realize how easy it is to selectively like edit and clip things, and how insanely crazy you can sell a particular factoid, something so far from the truth, just based on the collection of clips or things that you've gathered to show somebody.
Yeah. Well, I think we've both been the subject of clips that
Yeah.
have been widely misperceived. Do you ever worry that you are too online? Perhaps that is a category that doesn't even exist for you, but I wonder about just what your engagement with social media in particular, but I guess just all your time spent online. I wonder what that feels like, and and if there's any course correction in your life that you've thought about. Because I just have to say, I mean, every time I say it, it's now painfully boring, but the astonishment and even embarrassment associated with it is undiminished. I mean, when I deleted my Twitter account, my life changed radically, and in ways that I guess I could have anticipated. But it was like just getting off a drug, right? It was
Mhm.
just like I had just managed to completely fuck myself over in how I was engaging with this. I mean, it was this illusion. I mean, in part, it was worse than an illusion. It was a half truth, right? So it's very hard to debunk a half truth because you're always in touch with the half that's true. But the sense was that I was just getting information, in the most timely possible way about what was going on in areas.
I deleted, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I think I absolutely commend breaking news from Twitter and putting it onto YouTube. I think they're doing at enormous personal cost to themselves. Shout out to Depressed Ginger. He is breaking Twitter news and posting it everywhere. And he's like a soldier. He's just soldiering through the brain fog. So all the kudos to him. That's very righteous. Frankly, I value my mental health too much to do that. But yeah, I absolutely relate. This election cycle makes you feel like every waking hour that you spend at your computer. That's why after this video, I'm gonna go for a run, lift some weights, pull ups, dips, you know, eat healthy. Right, RFK talked about that. Another great person that Trump is going to surround himself with. Right, eat an animal-based diet. Right, get all this processed food and crap out of your life, people. It's all tainted, with microdoses of SSRIs anyway. Yeah, I mean, this is great stuff here from Sam Harris talking about how much of a life hack it was to just delete your social media account.
Areas of the world I care about, and to some degree that's true. Obviously, I mean, X has been the best place for that when there's breaking news. But what you're also getting is this funhouse mirror in which even people you know are appearing increasingly grotesque, and you have become one of the grotesques, at least for them. I mean, you can't even quite control how you're appearing for them, despite you have control over what you put out, and the clipification of everything, and the reaction or non-reaction, or what gets read into your silence, and just all of that. It's just an insane psychological experiment that we've all been enrolled in, and I don't think it's going well. And I don't think it's going well at scale for culture, and it certainly wasn't going well for me personally. So I'm just wondering how you think about this in your own life, and I guess just how you think about social media as a cultural phenomenon at this point.
Yeah. So narrowly speaking, just from me on a personal level, as animated as I am, and as much as I do care about these issues, when I'm tweeting, I'm tweeting. And when I'm being unhinged online, I'm being unhinged online, but I don't take that with me to sleep. I
Mm.
always tell people, especially young people, if I'm talking at like colleges or for whatever, when I get invited to do speeches to students, if your engagement with politics is making you miserable, you have to stop. If you're legitimately like, if you want to get a little bit wound up while you're there, that's fine. But if you find that for hours afterwards, you're just like left with this disgusting, horrible feeling, or it's like having a significant impact on other parts of your life emotionally, psychologically, then yeah, you have to disengage because you.
Jonathan Haidt has a really good book about this because it really disproportionately is affecting like middle school girls. And this is my life experience and the impact of social media. I mean, on everyone, but especially women is devastating.
You can't. I mean, like it's in a way, it's kind of like that. Don't set yourself on fire to keep others around you warm. If you're destroying yourself, even if you think you're going to do good or something by contributing online, you're not going to be able to by destroying yourself so much. So on a personal level, I do enjoy my life. I like fighting with people on Twitter. I like arguing with people. That's just the kind of person I grew up as. It's fun for me. But if I found that it was like, God, this is making me miserable, then I just don't engage with stuff that would make me feel that way, unless I have a very, very compelling reason to. On a broader sense,
But just
or
to
go ahead.
drill down on that, so you don't find or you don't suspect that it's giving you a distorted sense of humanity. I felt that the world was more populated with psychopaths than it in fact is. Right, like I knew because I could see that I was seeing the worst of even people who I actually know, and I know they wouldn't be that bad if I were sitting across the table from them. But online, and when pointed at their own audiences, they had it's like their ethical IQ got cut in half, right, and their basic decency just evaporated, and so I just felt like I was getting an inaccurate picture of just how unscrupulous most people are because they're functioning in an environment that is just turning normal people into psychopaths, but they're functionally psychopaths on.
And the election is how many weeks away, and you are preparing yourself mentally to vote for an actual, real sociopath.
Online, but offline they would still be normal people if I was just engaging them in that space.
So that's what I'm not sure about. So yeah, this is exactly what I was going to hit on the wider sense. I remember in like 2016, there was this, people used to say like, bro, like Twitter's not the real world. And I think they were kind of right for the most part. There was a lot of political discourse online, but people online were, as you said, they're kind of crazy. I think that as time has gone on, I don't think that we've moved towards realizing that people online are crazy. I think that the online world has become like reverse integrated into our reality, right? I mean, one, that's just a natural physical consequence of being closer physically to the internet, because now we all have a phone in our pockets that gets us onto the internet at every single point in time. Everything is connected and wired through the internet. News stations that talk to you on the radio or that you watch on TV, or like, oh, let's see what's going on, showing the Twitter feeds and all the presidents and all the candidates, and everybody is active on all of these social media things. So for all the craziness that exists online, it feels like we're moving more toward, like, online is becoming more reality driven in a very unfortunate way.
I have legitimately no idea what he's talking about. That's the thing. I have no idea what Destiny is talking about half the time, which is how I can tell that he's even more plugged into his laptop than I am. He's like plugged into a wall at this point. That is why I am advocating for the low information diet. That way you don't always need, you need to have enough information to short circuit evaluate moral decisions. You need to have the right moral education, moral educational background, and wherever you receive that is fine. If you were raised as a Jew or a Christian or a Buddhist, that is your background that you're going to use to make moral evaluations. And you don't need all the information, because once you have enough information, you can short circuit evaluate. But as Sam has always pointed out, and as Destiny is going to push back on in a couple of minutes, the operating system of fundamentalist Islam is not a viable moral code. It's not a viable moral framework for making moral and ethical decisions. Islam, that's the Quilium. It needs to be reformed. We're all Semitic peoples here. There's no reason we can't live in peace. All of these Abrahamic religions have a common origin. The Quran is actually very much inspired by, the Torah, because of the melodies and the tropes and the Beit HaMikdash, the Mikdash, and Ishai Fleisher can talk about this much more than I can. about all the commonalities between the Semitic peoples, and I appreciate anyone that spreads the truth about that. But we will not live next to the next terror state.
Like this, well, it's like that, oh man, there's this really dumb horror comic or whatever in Korean or Japanese or something, where there's like holes in walls that people put their bodies into and they come out like grotesquely disfigured on the other side. That's what social media, I think, is people look at it as like, well, it's just an online thing. But when you participate in it enough, it will change you. Right?
Yeah.
Every action you take is affecting your ultimate character in some way, size, shape, or form. And yeah, if you partake in these psychopathic environments, you act like it, it will, imprint itself on you in a reverse manner. So I think that's what's happening, unfortunately.
Yeah, but you don't feel like it's happening to you. I mean, you're not worried that it's bending you in your ethics or in your engagement with people based on just how much time you're spending in that space.
I mean, I try my best not to let it. Unfortunately, this is a part of the conversation where every single thing I say is a huge red flag, because all of the things around like truth and objectivity and centrality and all this are like aesthetics that people wear and then wield in the most bad faith manner possible. But I truly do, being politically independent, I really do try to, I have like little things that I do to keep in check, like where my biases are and how I'm viewing people and am I being fair or not. And there are like questions I ask myself and ways that I approach my community where I'm like, how do I make sure I'm not getting super audience captured or I'm not having a super distorted view of this particular thing? It usually involves a lot of reading and research on topics. It usually involves like actual discrete methods, like can I argue both sides of an issue compellingly? If I were to ask myself a question, what would it take to change my mind from this? Can I give a quick answer, or am I actually like getting ideologically captured? Would I be comfortable fighting with this particular person? Like, there are questions I ask myself to try to keep steady the course there. But I'm a unique case in that because I'm so not politically part of a big group. I do support the Democrats a lot, but I'm not politically part of those communities. I have more independence there because if I give a take, I'm not going to have to, all of a sudden disavow half my party or have a whole bunch of fights with people who thought they were my friend, who thought we were on the same page politically.
Yeah, I think we're in more or less the same orbit politically, as far as I understand the types of views you've argued for. Perhaps I mean, what do you think we disagree about, if anything?
What do we disagree about? Depends on how many. I think probably one of the big disagreements that people wanted me to fight on a lot, or that my fans would bring this up, is the centrality of religion in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That was a big one.
Yeah, well, maybe let's fight about that.
Sure.
Let me have it. What am I wrong about on that front?
I feel like when I hear you talk about it, I feel like Islam is a very big centerpiece to that conflict. I feel like if you look at the originations of the conflict, if you take the stretch of time from say like 1880 to 1967.
Okay, he said 1880 to 1967. So I think that is probably the first aliyah to the 1967 Six-Day War, I believe. What? What is your point? Okay, we have been literally dealing with terrorism since day one. Okay, I mean, pretty much. I mean, what happened was eventually Jewish people just thought to themselves, we need to do more to actually do more of the building, because hiring people to do the building, I mean, it's kind of like fluctuates, because if you hire people to do the building, you're perceived as like, as creating jobs. But at the same time, if you don't build it, yourself, then you can also be perceived as building the country on the backs of, workers. But it did become important, maybe during like the second aliyah. I think there was a labor movement. Foreign workers, you need migrant workers that do invaluable work, very difficult work that you need. But at the same time, you also need jobs. Okay, you don't want those people to take jobs. If you lay people off, that can also cause a really big problem. As for what he said about the centrality of Islam in the conflict, it is the doctrine of Islam is absolutely the center. And this is the reason why I can't really cancel Sam Harris, because Sam Harris is, like, for me, is the only sane voice on reforming Islam. He's the only person who, at enormous expense to himself, has taken on this issue of reforming Islam, debunking the apologists. He's the only one who has taken seriously the problem of jihad and its origins in the Quran. So I absolutely commend Sam Harris for what he's done for years and years and years, and his book on Islam and the Future of Tolerance is a great book. Destiny, is he an author? Not to my knowledge. I think he's just a gamer. I haven't read anything, from him, and everything I listen to just makes me want to rip my ears off. So I really just think that he schmoozes very well with Rob Fleisher, but I personally cannot talk to this kid. He's just so obnoxious to me. I mean, just everything he says is just so all right, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that this video brought you a little bit, a clarity, maybe some insights about the candidates and who to vote for. And I hope that this video really gave some pushback on this conversation, on this really, in my opinion, is kind of a ridiculous conversation, I'm not saying, obviously there's an election coming up. I think that conversations like this are, first of all, even though it's ridiculous, there's a reason why I picked it. Okay, there's a reason why I'm doing a reaction video to it. It's because it's substantive. Even though I can't talk to Destiny for my mental health, right, at least at this moment, I appreciate Sam and Destiny for trying. These conversations like these are very concerning because when you just rip and rip and rip on the next president, someone has to make a reaction video and push back on some of these points and really it's on some of these attitudes that they have. It may have been warranted in 2016. It's just that after 4 years of Trump and after 4 years of de facto Harris, I think that the choice for Americans is very simple. Was your life better off under Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? I think that this election is just a very simple choice. And what it really comes down to is, are you stupid? And people in 2020 that voted for Biden, I'm sorry, but you were, even if we can have all this debate about domestic policy, I don't think Marxism has any place in our country. But if you voted for Biden in 2020 for foreign policy, you did vote for October. That was a vote for October 7th, and anyone that tells you anything different is lying, is living in make-believe. And all I'm saying is that in 2024, there is a very good chance that a vote for a Kamala Harris is a vote for the next October 7th in the United States. Okay, now I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but don't be so sure that it isn't. This is a very dangerous moment. We need Trump now. MAGA.
If you take the majority of Muslim religious elite today in this region, they preach jihadism and a positive attitude towards the murder of Jews. That's pretty rough. That's pretty rough that you have that ideology. So people like myself think it's important to mitigate that ideology, mitigate people that think that way here. And in simple words, I don't think we want people that want to kill us within our country and on our borders.
When you say we don't want them here, do you mean like...
I don't want jihadis here.
As in like push them out or...
Figure out, help immigration, that's fine. Help people find a different way. There's now many countries that are willing to take Gazan refugees. But if you're a jihadist, you've got to find your way out of here, because we can't be having that in the country. I think it's so simple. It's really. We use a lot of fancy words, but like you can't have people who believe in a neo-Nazism living in your land. That's not going to be cool. And so we gotta help them find a way to either re-educate them, which is fine, meaning to say get into their schools, get into their mosques, and make sure that they're not teaching bad doctrine, or help them find their way out of the country, or fight with them, hopefully win. So those are the ways. If you could think of any other ways, that would be great. I think that the Abraham Accords heralds a different consciousness, and I would like to see more folks here think that way. Sadly, Hamas had an excellent, I would say, victory on October the 7th, and that made them much more popular to the detriment of the people around here, both the Jews and the Arabs, because more Arabs accept that ideology. So I would like to see more Abraham Accords way of thinking, which is the Jewish people have a right to live in this land, and we're ethnic national states, the Arab countries, and this is a Jewish ethnic national state, and let's work together for a better region.
Hypothetically, if there could be like a Palestinian state here, and in this hypothetical world, it's not a security threat at all. Like we know the state will be peaceful.
Right.
Would you still want the land because of to be part of Israel for other reasons like history, or would you be okay to give that up?
That's a very fair question. First thing, before we get to your hypothetical, before we get to hypotheticals, let's talk about reality. We actually have tried out that hypothetical now a few times. We tried it with Gaza. I was there in 2005 trying to stop my country from giving away the land to the PA, and that was going to be this here we're going to give this chunk of land to the Gazans, and they're going to work it out. But instead, it became what we said it was going to become, which is a front line for the jihad. So that's number one: is that when we give away land, we basically allow the jihad to take it over and to use it as a forward base to attack us. That happened also in Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank. The PA took control. Lots of terrorism came out of there. We had to do a war to make an incursion to stop what they're doing. And basically, every time South Lebanon, we left South Lebanon, it became a place for Hezbollah. So before I get to your hypothetical, why don't I just use the pretty broad, scientifically tested hypothesis in that hypothetical and show you that, factually speaking, it becomes the place of jihad.
Just as a real quick on the factual thing, there are counterexamples too, right? Because you probably would have protested the destruction of the settlements of the Sinai.
1,000%.
Yeah, but
and you're absolutely right. And I was just about to get to that.
Okay.
Which is, although I would disagree with you that the Sinai is a peaceful thing.
You can disagree, but it's factually true that whatever's coming from the Sinai now is significantly better than Egypt being a warring country against you.
I disagree with that totally.
Okay.
And that's not factually true. That's
absolutely true.
It's not even. How could you even tell that? How could you use the word factually?
What is the population of Egypt? How many Jews are in Israel?
We have a war. We have a state of war with Syria. We held on to the Golan Heights, and that's much better than what happened in the Sinai. The Sinai, we gave away a huge chunk of land. Now all of the war armament that has come into Gaza is all through those tunnels. We know that the Egyptian army looks the other way, and frankly, the Sinai was never historically Egyptian. It's a completely British colonialist makeup.
Syria split 20 different ways against itself. I don't think
exactly,
Syria
and that could have happened in Egypt as well.
If Egypt wants to be split against...
You said it's a fact that because we're not at war with Egypt, it's better. Who said that?
History says that.
History does not say that.
History. Look at the stability. How many coups, how many different leaders have been in Syria? In Syria from the 20s
and Egypt also had a coup. Exactly the point.
Yeah, but not as bad. It's still a stable,
Israel
functioning
holding
country.
onto its land and being a big, strong country in this region is better for this region and better for Israel. That's my opinion. And you don't have a fact. You have a guess of how it would have looked like, but it's not the way it necessarily would have looked like. And I'm giving you another example from a different country that it's not.
The West Bank also, after the transfer to the PA, has been more peaceful than it was under Arafat. I think that's indisputable as well.
Arafat is the PA.
Arafat's dead. Abbas is the PA now. The PA that you've got now is a man that wears a suit. It's a country that doesn't intifada you.
It's amazing what you pass over for peace. We had 35 Jews murdered before October 7th here in the West Bank. Okay, and you call that peace? What an absolute I'm so happy for you that you live in Miami Beach and you have a concept of what peace looks like in our region.
Well, historically,
this is the stuff that pisses me off. Yeah. You say things on TV. I'm like, what the fudge are you saying? What the fudge are you saying? We have a state of war. These people, they literally teach jihadism every single day, and you're telling me it's peace. Literally, you turn on PA TV, they're telling you to kill Israel, to kill Jewish people. You're telling me it's peace. It's like I'm telling you, in your world of reading books. That's why I'm happy you're here. It's like
hold on. Peace compared to what? I'm critical of the West, where the West analyzes the Middle East.
I want to hold on to my land and destroy jihadism.
You're doing the comparing what is peace here to what is peace in America too. Obviously, the standards are different, but the peace that Israelis enjoy today is significantly better in the past. That's why you yourself said you wanted to live here.
It's not significantly better in the past.
Then why are you here instead of Miami or New York?
Not because of peace. I'm not here for peace.
Because there's something here, because it's more stable, because it's safer. You said it's an ethnic
is that what you think I'm here for? Because I chose a more peaceful existence than Miami?
What is an armed ethnic enclave that's defending itself? It's something that's creating, it's carving out like a more peaceful niche for Jews than what would have otherwise existed in other parts of the world.
Well, yeah, but it's not, okay, that's true.
It's not just that. I understand it's not just that. There's history here.
You are right that we are trying to carve out a more decent life here. And I guess my point is that we'd like to carve out a little bit more peace through no more bad guys in our country.
That's okay. Fine, but it's like a girl putting on eyeliner. If you draw too much, you destroy it all. You can carve out more and more peace if you want. If you sculpt a marble block too much, all you have left is a pile of rubble.
I'll teach you in Jewish. We say hafuch like this. We go hafuch.
Yeah.
We go exactly the opposite. It's because if you keep cutting out, then it starts to look ugly. We have now cut out the Sinai, the South Lebanon, parts of the West Bank, part of Gaza, and every one of these things has become a place where the jihad moves up to our borders. And I say, no, be a big Israel. When I say big Israel, it's still a tiny country in this region. Be a big Israel. Be a kick-ass. Push back on jihadism.
So you rather
by the way, just yesterday I was with Druze, and just yesterday, and I'll meet you, I'll introduce you to any Druze people. They always say to me, I said to him, yesterday I was with Druze soldiers. I said to them, what do you think about the Jewish state? They're like, I knew what he was going to say because they always say the same thing. He's like, you guys are weak. You guys are weak. You guys are weak around here. You don't understand how to push back on the jihad. You cannot allow the jihad to have 150,000 rockets on your borders, to have tunnel systems in Gaza. That's just dumb. Stop being dumb. Push back on these guys the way that the Arabs would. Just the way the Arabs take care of their own jihad that wants to topple their regimes.
I'm just saying there has to be a balance. Just being weak and being strong.
I am for balance. I am for balance. I am for Abraham Accords.
Nasser was a strong leader. He lost all of his wars. Assad is a brutal, strong leader. His country is falling apart. Saddam Hussein was a strong leader. He got hung by his own people.
They were not strong. They were seditious. They were seditious people. Not seditious, sadists. They were sadists. They were people who hated their people, who stole money from their people, who abused their women, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not trying to be like that. I'm not trying to be a sadist.
Some people would argue that parts of the Islamic State, that assassin report showed that people were funneling money from the government off to outposts and settlements, and that
outposts and settlements are brave Jews holding onto our land.
As you said, that's the perspective of some Jews, but it's not a whole opinion, right?
Well, today you're speaking with me, aren't you?
I am.
All right, good talk, and we'll have more opportunities to schmooze. Let's do it. Let's go to the car and go to our next location.
Cool.
I have an important meeting with some Arabs in Hebron at 2 p.m.
Cool.
So I want to make sure that you get